Tsukuba Circuit is better known for time attack than drift, but it has become one of the major venues on the D1 calendar. Here we caught up with Ken Sato, a D1 driver who was helping a customer with his AE86. He had some trouble in practice, shearing the end off a drive shaft. This is a common problem for AE86 drift cars, so he had a spare shaft ready to go in. This car is set up to compete at the D1 level with an SR20 turbo engine conversion. The engine has all the usual light tune parts, such as a Z32 airflow meter and bolt-on turbo upgrade. The intercooler is mounted flat, with the radiator laid back on an angle underneath. This V-mount layout was inspired by the Japanese GT cars. The car has been lightened too, with race seats, a full cage and IKEA Formula gearshift. An Arpex rev speed meter and boost controller replace the normal instruments. Not that you have time to look at them when drifting. Let's see how he goes in the qualifying round. After a brief warm-up, it's time to attack the middle hairpin corner. The judges are watching from the moment they exit this first hairpin. Not a bad effort, but it wasn't enough to make the cut for this event. The judges said he let the revs drop too much mid-corner, so the exit was too slow. Another AE86 driver who always gets into the top 16 is Ken Maeda. His Up Garage sponsored Levin has a turbocharged 20-valve 4AGE engine. It uses a Blitz turbo on a custom manifold with a thick aluminium radiator and trussed front mount intercooler. Our friend Ken Sato asked if we could put the HPI camera in his car. Maeda is a great character, who always has time to wave to his friends. He doesn't mind waving at cameras either. Now for the first judge lap. Watch how much faster he goes into the hairpin. With a perfect pass in the bag, Ken decides to run wide and wave to the judges. Everyone loves a showman, but it seemed to distract the next driver. Front spoilers are always fitted loosely, so the panels aren't damaged when this happens. In the top 16 eliminations, two cars battle together, which is always the best part to watch. Maeda makes it look easy, but it takes years of experience to reach this level. And you can't stop practicing because new drivers are always chasing the top 16. Sapporo Auto Salon is much smaller than the Tokyo show, but you get to see some cars that don't make it to the other auto salons. This pink S15 from Cruise is a good example. Cruise are hoping it'll be the first rear-wheel drive car to do a 56-second lap at Tsukuba. The next day, it was one of many show cars displayed in the pits at Shiraoi Carland. This racetrack on the southern coast of Hokkaido was used for drift demonstrations and even some drag racing passes after the show. Many local drifters came along to join in on the drift demonstrations. Some cars definitely weren't entered in the glamour part of the show. The strangest drag battle saw a V12 Century and a V8 SEMA from Junction Produce barreling down the main straight. It's not often you see 2-ton cars on a drag strip. Daijiro is the famous top-speed driver for Option magazine in Japan. To see if he can drift too, they put him in an SR20 powered Z32. Apparently not, but there were plenty of other drivers there who can. The more powerful cars really pump out the smoke, especially on the sweeper leading onto the straight. It's bad manners not to spin when your teammate does. Ideally, you should both spin together. The crowd favourite was this S13 Silvia. It had plenty of power, so it really shredded the rear tyres. Near the city of Gifu, we found a car shop called Kid's Heart. It's a combined car yard and drift workshop, which turns out some interesting cars like this C35 Laurel with a GTR engine transplant. After talking to the owners, we were invited to see their favourite drift location in the mountains south of Gifu. The word Toge means mountain pass. These remote winding mountain roads are considered much more of a challenge than drifting on a circuit. A small group of drifters had already gathered when we arrived, along with a few dedicated spectators. There's certainly less room for error, with a guardrail on one side and a deep gutter on the other. D1 driver Chiyoshi Tezuka took the Laurel out for a test drive, so we followed in another car to take a look. It's so dark up here you can't see a thing without headlights. On the way down, the drivers check the course and try to memorise the hazards. Only a short section of road is used to minimise the chance of meeting other traffic.
お名前は高血英二です。英二。はい。
この車は毎日乗ってるんです。
毎日。通学にも使ってます。
そうですか。前の車は何？
前の車も同じで、それの前がローレル。
ローレル。前のは何があった？
前のは 特になんもなけどエンジンが壊れちゃったもんで、
ああそうですか。
もう捨てちゃって。
大きいクラッシュことがありましたか？
大きいクラッシュはあんまりないけどコツコツと
あ、よかった
ちょっと
AFC でチューニングする。
いや AFC これは今繋いでない。コンピューターがマインズのコンピューターに変わってるもんで。
あ、チューンドロームなんです。
チューンドローム。
いくつ
20
20?
20。
あ、いつドレッドは始まりましたか？
免許取ってすぐだから18。
18。
はい。
ずっとドレッドしてるんですか？
間1年間ぐらいは車がない時期があったもんで、免許取ってすぐ買ってで事故してで潰してで次の乗ってってやっとって、この車乗り継ぐ間がちょっとあるもんで、実質的には1年ないぐらい。
そうです警察はあんまり峠に来ないんですか？
ここはたまに来る。けど僕がいつも行ってる明神の森っていうところは絶対来ない。
そうですか？よくやった。
Suzuka Circuit is most famous for the Formula One race held here, but for the rest of the year it is open to other events, like this circuit run organised by Battle magazine. Most of the local workshops attended the event, using it as a chance to set up their demo cars. Some were cars built for the Super Taikyu series, others were set up for time attack or just general circuit thrashing. The variety of cars was such that they just had to split them into two big groups based on lap times. It's pretty easy to see which group this car was in, though it actually had a single turbo, despite what the stickers indicate. This Esprit NSX was one of the fastest outright on the very long Suzuka circuit. In one garage we bumped into an old friend. Chinan-san from C&Y Sports had just finished building his AE86 for a customer to suit both drift and circuit racing. On the fast Suzuka track, it still behaves more like a drift car.
S14 をベースにヘッドのチューニング、カムを変えて、あとは腰下は一応今ノーマルです。でタービンは2835プロをオリジナルのタコ足を作って、で420、30馬力を目標に作ってくる。
そう。
はい。
あとミッション
は今のところ14のノーマルがついてます。
ディフとブレーキは
GTR のブレーキがついてて、あとはデフは 7.5 インチのデフ大きくしてあります。
that last set of S's is only for club events, to keep speed down on the main straight. On such a long circuit, the tyres start to go after just a few laps, so Garage Defend had plenty of spare sets for their car. This R33 GTR competes in the Super Taikyu series, which is one of the most competitive classes in Japan. Body mods are limited, but there are still plenty of special parts on this car, like the oil cooler for the diff and the titanium exhaust system. Big ducts at the front feed enormous 15-inch AP brake discs with 6 piston calipers. The turbos are Truss T517Zs, chosen for response rather than outright power. Garage Defend claim a power output of 550 horsepower, but that all depends on the boost. The billet Brakemaster is very race oriented, though plenty of street tuning parts are used too. Most important is the cooling system, using an ARC header tank. Inside, the weight reduction isn't too dramatic, but air jacks have been incorporated into the cage to help with pit stops during a race. The transmission is an R34 Getrag 6-speed, though on shorter tracks they often use a close ratio OS Geeken 5-speed. The car in front is the same R33 we saw earlier. It produces well over 700 horsepower, but lacks a little finesse. The blue R33 is also in a straight line, but too sketchy in the corners, so the Garage Defend driver backs off to let him get away. Just when things are looking good, an intercooler hose pops off and spoils the lap. Makes you wonder how much boost they were running. The hose was easy enough to fix, but they were already out of time for this session. Nikko Circuit, 2 hours north of Tokyo, is one of the most popular drift tracks in Japan. There are several drift meetings every week, with large events drawing over 100 cars. Even at a club level event, there are some very talented drifters and well-prepared cars. Often D1 drivers attend just to practice and maybe add another trophy to their collection. At the other end of the scale, some cars are just junk, and treated that way too. Tyres are always the biggest casualty at these meetings. Every car will need at least 3 sets of rear tyres for a single day of drift. It becomes expensive when you're running 18-inch wheels. But no one said motorsport was cheap. This JZX 110 was one of the more expensive cars here, with a big IHI turbo. An older JZX 81 like this seems like a wiser choice. Even better, an old Thrasher 180SX like this. Unfortunately, the owner seems to be colourblind. Our pick for presentation was this R32 sedan with VIP style rims and a paint colour borrowed from a Daihatsu Naked. The RB20 has been swapped for an RB25 from an R33 with a HKS 2540 turbo. The transmission has also been swapped from auto to an R33 5-speed. Let's see if he can keep the panels straight. Sometimes you just can't get enough opposite lock. His friend's 180SX is a more typical drift machine, with a Truss T517Z turbo bolted onto the original SR20 engine. The sparkly paint is a common drift look too. The catch is that the owner wasn't driving, so everyone was watching closely. Takes is something like this to spoil your concentration. Luckily, the car wasn't damaged. Even the rims look okay. This JZX81 Mark II was in D1 until recently. Now the driver is trying to qualify for next season. The Toyota 1JZ has been replaced by a Nissan RB26 with a big single turbo pushing it to over 500 horsepower, even at mile boost levels. Even the brakes have been swapped for Nissan parts. Inside, a pair of Bosch pumps make a racket, but not as much as the turbo wastegate when it opens. Maybe he'll be back in D1 next year, but this guy won't. The weirdest part of the day was a running race for the entrance. Prizes were lined up on the finish line, and all the guys lined up on another part of the track, with the girls given a bit of a head start. And yes, they were playing that music on the PA. The girls really needed that head start, as it turned out. So what was the prize? A litre of engine oil. Hardly worth the effort, really. Here we are again in the mountains of Sendai. Over 150 cars have entered the final event in the JDDA drag racing calendar, starting with the rear-wheel drive street tyre class. Almost every car in this class uses Nitto tyres, so big burnouts are essential. C&Y Sports have an unusual entry in this class. This JZX90 Mark II was built for a customer with an 800 horsepower RB26 instead of the original 1JZ. The heavy Mark II body is not exactly ideal for drag racing though. This R32 GTS-T is also using an RB26, again with a T88 turbo. Only the cam covers are RB20 parts. The tyres are street legal, but because they aren't radials, it competes in the open class. The flares are a bit of a giveaway. There were a few female entrants in this year's event too, though they still seem to need some tuition. DR30 Skylines is still a very popular drag car, so much so that they have their own class. It seems they all like to hang out together too. The old FJ20 turbo engine responds well to some mild upgrades, but most cars went a lot further than that. The best cars were running low 11s, sometimes even better. old cars do have their problems, of course, but this RB26 powered 260Z was a consistent performer. The best sounding cars are the old naturally aspirated entries. It's a far cry from the sort of cars running in American all-motor classes. We showed you the Garage Saurus S14 and HPI V6. It uses an S13 engine with a unique twin-turbo setup. The twin TD05s can support 700 horsepower. It didn't win its class on the day though. The quickest Silvia was this grey S15. Later we heard the C&Y car with a death rattle in the engine. Sure enough, they were soon picking up the pieces. Unfortunately, the entire length of track was also covered in oil. Amazingly, the event managers asked everyone in the pits to come and help clean up the mess with brake cleaner and rags. That's something you could only ever see in Japan. The Takagi Silvia has run as fast as 9.8 seconds at Central Circuit, but it hasn't run a 9 yet at Sendai. The RB26 runs a pair of Arpex RX6 turbos and makes nearly 1,000 horsepower, which is pretty hard to get to the ground through only 2 Nitto tyres. The computer is still being tuned to suit the high altitude of this track. Still just short, but much better than the Porsche, which fried its clutch. This Z32 has been running at Sendai for a couple of years now, with a naturally aspirated VG30 engine and 6-port nitrous system. bad for an Atmo engine. Here's another rear-wheel drive entry from Takagi. Not quite as extreme as the S13. Soon it was time for the GTRs to join the party. The GTR class was huge as usual, though relatively few cars were running 9s or better at this meeting. New entrants like this R34 outnumbered the more famous cars. Garagesaurus had some of the toughest entries, like this R32. C&Y couldn't dwell on their misfortune with the Mark II as they were busy with their AE85. The car has moved into the open class with Mickey Thompson tyres, and the new Truss T88H 38GK turbo has been fitted to boost power to around 1,000 horsepower. Jin & Son hasn't lost his passion for long burnouts. Even with the new tyres, it's a pretty violent ride. 9.7 matched the car's PB, but then they turn up the boost for another run. Now he's in the same league as sponsored entries, like this Blitz RX-7. GTR times kept falling until Garage Saurus brought out their best car. The rear-wheel drive open class cars mostly run similar times to the street tyre GTRs. Of course, there are exceptions. Kojima's 260Z was now running an OS Geekin 3-litre engine. It makes the alcohol-fueled Camaro look pretty pointless. Duke are making progress with their new R33, which is getting deeper into the 8s. Their rear-wheel drive R33 has gone from green to white, but the times are about the same. A new entrant in this class is the RE Master Cosmo, which had plenty of power but some serious issues with traction.
R30 クラスの2回戦を行います。R30
If you think this guy's having a bad day, wait until you see the Carmen Ghia. Thanks to a parachute failure, he went straight through the tyre wall at the end of the track. The driver got out unhurt, and the engine is mounted in the back, so it should be okay too.
Welcome to my
Sendai Highland is known for its drag strip and race circuit, but behind the pits they also have a dedicated drift track. Several of the major drift clubs from northern Japan were there in force for a regional event, with a lot of professional looking cars in the mix. The track was run in clockwise and anti-clockwise directions to make the most of the limited number of turns. A number of female entrants at this particular meet were competing on a level footing with the guys. The driver of this S14 would put most Australian drifters to shame, so we just had to talk to her. Her car is a very typical Japanese drift machine, with a light-tuned engine and partly stripped interior. Don't be fooled by her shy manner. Behind the wheel, it's a different story. She wasn't happy when they stopped the session after only 3 laps. Wearing a helmet really messes with your hair. At least she can put on her high heels before getting out of the car. Marriage proposals can be directed to www.hpi.com.au. In our last video, we showed the big XTR turbo being fitted to our R34 project car, but we still didn't have a chance to race it. Croydon Racing Developments managed to keep the turbo and the Turbo Smart wastegate mounted low. This makes them less obvious in the engine bay, but they did the job on the dyno. We had estimated that we'd need this sort of power to run an 11 on street tyres, so we went to Eastern Creek to try it out. Couldn't get traction at the old Eastern Creek strip, so we took a long drive down to the Heathcote track in Victoria to try again. Only just into the 11s, but it's good enough for us. We've been following the progress of the Willow Racing GTR. It's already the quickest street tyre GTR in Australia, but we'll have even more to show you in HPI V9.
We're looking at Kerry Wilson down here, who went an 8.84 twice in a row. And what happened, just so simple, everything's going to be right for the run back.